Welcome students to the SRBPS virtual classroom program. I am Prerna Rathi, your biology teacher. I hope you are all staying safe, staying inside and staying away from corona. I request you all to have healthy food, to stay happy, to work out, to help your parents, and most importantly during this time, children, you must all learn and grow. In today's lecture, we are going to take forward the last chapter, that is chapter 14 of Ecology, Ecosystems. The learning objectives of today's class include to get a clear knowledge of the following topics. We are going to deal with food chain, food web, energy flow, energy pyramids, ecological succession, nutrient cycling, and ecological services. So students, let us start ecosystem part 2. We have already learned about decomposition, so let's straight away start food chain. What do you mean by a food chain? Food chain, students, is basically the transfer of energy, yes, in the form of food from the producer through a series of organisms. The food chains represent the energy flow through various ecosystems, and every step in a food chain is known as a trophic level. So, in order to know what a food chain is, we can write that food chain is a series of organisms in which who eats whom in order to transfer the energy. Now, there are two types of food chain that we need to discuss in our syllabus. The first food chain is the grazing food chain. The grazing food chain consists of producers continued by herbivores, carnivores and further so on. For example, as you can see, a grass eats a goat and goat is eaten by a man. Yes, some man eat goat. Then the next type of food chain is detritus food chain. The food chain that begins with dead organic matter, both dead animals as well as plants, is known as the detritus food chain. For example, a dead leaf is eaten by earthworm, which is then eaten by a bird. Here, saprophytes or saprotrophs play a very important role. Saprophytes are the decomposers like the fungi, bacteria, which feed on detritus. Detritus is the dead part of organisms, both plants as well as animals. We've already learned what is a trophic level. Each step or each level, children, in a food chain is known as trophic level. You've done in your previous classes. Producers, primary consumers, secondary consumers, tertiary consumers, quaternary consumers. These are various trophic levels of a food chain. In order to understand these concepts better, we need to understand the definition of standing crop. What do you mean by standing crop? Each trophic level has certain mass of living material at any particular time. Now students, that mass of living material at a trophic level is known as the standing crop of that trophic level. The standing crop is always measured as the mass of living organism. Mass here refers to biomass per unit area. Okay, and it can also be number per unit area, whatever is more feasible. For example, if we want to calculate in case of trees, we can calculate the number of trees per unit area very easily. But in case you have to calculate the standing crop of a wheat field, तो wheat field में हम plant के number count करने नहीं जा सकते हैं. There we will be using the first method, that is biomass per unit area. Now children, if you know, food chain is a very theoretical concept. That grass will be eaten by grasshopper will be eaten by a frog, and frog will be eaten by a snake. We know that grass can be eaten by rabbit also, and that rabbit can be eaten by snake also. So basically, various food chains in our system are connected. and these interconnected food chains are known as food web. As you can see clearly from this diagram, how the producers can be consumed by different consumers. In this food web, we are able to see very clearly that one organism can play different roles in an ecosystem. An organism can be at a different trophic level in each food chain. Okay, now let us discuss energy flow. We have already discussed that food chain shows not only the transfer of food from one organism to another, but also the flow of energy from one organism to another. As you can see, the ultimate source of energy is sun. The radiant energy from sun is known as PAR, photosynthetically active radiation, PAR. Out of the total solar radiation, 50% is called PAR. And out of this 50%, a very efficient plant or an area can only use or capture about 2 to 10% of PAR. 10% has not been reached by the Amazon rainforest also. So it's a very theoretical concept once again. Basically, the area that where we live in, the capturing of PAR reaches with ultimate difficulty it reaches 4% to 5%. That's it. That's also in our green fields. Fine. So this shows basically the transfer of energy from sun to producers, to consumers, to decomposers. And also it symbolizes a nutrient recycling pool. Now if you can see, the producer, the consumer and the decomposers, all three of them dissipate some amount of energy in the form of heat, as we have already learnt. So basically remember the productivity topic. So basically the net productivity is going to be gross productivity minus the respiratory losses of that particular trophic level. The energy transfer is hereby governed by a very important law that is called Lindman's 10% law. It says that during the transfer of energy from one trophic level to another, only 10% of the energy is given to the next level. Okay. So now let us discuss the ecological pyramid. What do you mean by an ecological pyramid? An ecological pyramid is a graphical representation of energy first, biomass second, and number of organisms third in the form of a pyramid. Fine children, as you can see, there are various characteristic features of ecological pyramid. The base of the pyramid is broad and its apex is narrow. The relationship can be easily expressed in three terms. We've already done that: number, energy and biomass. Yes, the base of the pyramid represented by the producer, then the apex is going to be the top consumer, the last consumer or the top carnivore. In most ecosystems, all the pyramids, number, energy and biomass are upright pyramids. What is an upright pyramid? An upright pyramid बच्चे is that pyramid which has a broad base, जिसका base चौड़ा होता है और apex कैसा होता है? Narrow, नुकीला, pointed रहता है, as you can see in both these pyramids. Now, the concept of inverted pyramid. Mostly the pyramid is going to be an upright pyramid, but we did not say that it cannot be an inverted pyramid. Hereby we are discussing the inverted pyramid. In a tree ecosystem, if you see, producer is just one tree, herbivores, many birds can be there, then parasites living with these birds, even more than then, hyperparasites living inside the parasites, even more, because these hyperparasites are microorganisms which are even present in larger number. Similarly, number pyramid also can be, the biomass pyramid also can be inverted. As you can see, the pyramid of biomass in sea is also inverted because of biomass of fishes is more than that of phytoplanktons. Fine children? The pyramid of energy on the other hand can never be inverted. It is always upright. Why? Because we know some of the energy is always lost in the form of heat, that is the respiratory losses of that particular organism. The next topic that we have to discuss in this chapter is ecological succession. What do you mean by ecological succession? The gradual and predictable change in the species composition of a given area during the passage of time is known as ecological succession. There are two types of successions, primary succession and secondary succession. What is primary succession? The succession that starts where no living organisms are there is known as primary succession. यानी ऐसी जगह सक्सेशन होना जहां अब से पहले, आज से पहले कोई लाइफ हुई ही नहीं है. That is known as primary succession. The secondary succession on the other hand is a succession that starts in areas which have lost all the living organisms that existed there. यानी ये वो एरिया है जहाँ पे लाइफ पहले थी लेकिन फिर किसी रीज़न की वजह से ख़त्म हो गई और अब दोबारा वापस आ रही है. प्राइमरी सक्सेशन जैसे एक बेयर रॉक पे हो सकता है. सेकेंडरी सक्सेशन जैसे एक जले हुए फॉरेस्ट में हो सकता है. ठीक है. Now let us discuss two types of succession, hydrarch succession and xerarch succession. Hydrarch succession occurs in wetter areas. This means conversion of ponds into forest, and xerarch succession takes place in dry areas. It means conversion of deserts into forest. We know that life always takes us towards moderateness. So similarly here also every area has a tendency to reach moderate condition. If it is wet, it will become a moderate forest. If it is too dry, it will become a moderate forest. Now, in order to understand succession better, we must be familiar with certain important terms that we will be using. The first term hereby is a pioneer species. What do you mean by a pioneer species? The species that invades a bare area, for example lichens, phytoplanktons, are known as pioneer species. Primary succession on rocks are lichens which are able to secrete acids to dissolve the rock, helping the weathering and soil formations. So basically lichens वो pioneer species होती हैं जो bare rocks के ऊपर जब metabolize करती हैं तो rock के जो particles हैं उन्हें loosen कर देती हैं, which facilitates the weathering. इससे rock किस में convert होगा? Soil में. ये पहला step है towards the formation of forest. जब ये lichens and mosses इस rock में soil formation start कर देंगे, then there will be small annual plants which will get converted into small grasses, which will get converted into herbs, shrubs, shade intolerant trees, and then finally shade tolerant trees forest will be formed. The next topic that we have to discuss in this chapter is nutrient cycling or the biogeochemical cycles. Not that we are doing it for the first time. We have already done in our smaller classes that the movement of nutrient elements through various components of ecosystem, the atmosphere, the lithosphere, the hydrosphere, and between the living and the non-living components, the soil and the organisms, is known as nutrient cycling. There are two types of nutrient cycle, the gaseous cycle and the sedimentary cycle. The gaseous cycle is that nutrient cycle where the major reservoir is the atmosphere. For example, the carbon cycle, and the nitrogen cycle. Sedimentary cycle on the other hand is the cycle where the reservoir is Earth's crust or the soil. For example, the phosphorus cycle and sulfur cycle. Very briefly, let us discuss the carbon cycle. The carbon cycle has atmosphere as its reservoir, and in the atmosphere carbon is present in the form of carbon dioxide. This carbon dioxide is utilized by green plants for the process of photosynthesis. These green plants respire and metabolize to give carbon dioxide back to the environment. Apart from that, these green plants are consumed by animals. On death, both green plants and animals lead to the formation of fossil fuels. These fossil fuels are burned in the presence of oxygen. Again, the process is called combustion and they lead to the formation of carbon dioxide in the atmosphere. So as you can see, cycling कब होगी? जब जो atmosphere से लिया गया वो atmosphere को ही वापस दे दिया जाएगा. And as you can see, by the process of combustion, respiration and metabolism, we are giving it back to the environment. And by the process of photosynthesis, we are taking it from the environment. Fine. A little more details on this. Carbon constitutes about 49% of the dry weight of all the organisms. Around 0.003% of carbon dioxide is present in the atmosphere. It is fixed by the process of photosynthesis and it returns to the atmosphere. We've already done by metabolism, respiration and combustion. Okay. Let us now discuss the phosphorus cycle. As we've already seen, phosphorus cycle, students, is it is a cycle where phosphorus is transferred between various layers of an ecosystem. As you can see, the producers, the plants which have taken phosphorus from the soil solution by the help of xylem, pass on the phosphorus to the consumers. Both plants and animals, that is producers and consumers, on their death lead to detritus formation, which after decomposition forms soil solution. Apart from that, there are certain phosphorus rocks. Phosphorus rocks also, after their withering, give the soil certain amount of phosphorus. This is how phosphorus is cycled. Little more detail. Phosphorus is a major constituent of organisms. We know for DNA formation, for various protein formation. It is found in nucleic acids. It is found in the ATP molecule. Many animals also need large quantities of this element to make shells, bone, teeth. We also need. And whenever the rocks are withered, they provide certain amount of phosphorus to the soil. Apart from that, whenever the decomposition of the detritus of plants and animals takes place, that also adds to the phosphorus present in the soil solution. Here we come to the end of the chapter, ecosystem services. The products of ecosystem processes are called as ecosystem services. For example, the forest ecosystems purify the air, they provide water, they control droughts, floods, it cycles nutrients, generates fertile soils, provides wildlife habitat, it maintains a proper level of biodiversity. It is very important for the storage site of carbon. It also provides aesthetic, cultural and spiritual values. Apart from that, there is a scientist in the US called Robert Constanza. Along with his colleague, he has tried to put a price tag on. So students, I believe you are able to understand the basic concepts of ecosystem now. Until next class, I wish you all happiness and good health. Take care, students.